Hello, today we have the second part of Disclosing Education and Employment, and the second part is only about employment, disclosing employment. So what is the content? Yeah. First thing, drink water. Okay. The first thing in general about employment. The second thing, the establishment and professions of the future. So I want to mention some these establishments and professions that are going to be in in expanding. And for the last, I was some interesting thing about the origin of the 8-hour workday, then the related working life and pension. For when is all of this originating? Well, let's go step by step. The first thing is in general about employment. What is the situation today? First of all, if education is limping, then employment cannot work miracles, even less in the monetary economy, and this you already know. But the biggest difficulty with unemployment is the saturation of certain professions and the deficiency of others, not counting the artificially created crises and recessions. This you already know that this can be an artificial thing. In order to reduce the unemployment rate, they should, in particular, the secondary schools and universities, as well as the employers and the countries itself, constantly overseeing which professions are the most needed. In fact, we should educate the deficient professions where there is a high demand for workforce. workforce. We should think of the future, since the purpose of employment is not merely that a person gets the daily bread, so that the money is circulating. No, but that a person contributes to the progress of civilizations, so technologically, but most importantly, spiritually, because we have today more than enough technology. Though it isn't sparse around the world in the poorer countries. So where there is a low demand of workforce, it should be necessary to limit the enrollment in the secondary schools and universities, since the current state is reflecting an imbalance between employers and the workers, and the result is unemployment, simply. In fact, the system is supporting mostly the professions and programs that are saturating the workforce market, and and not the deficient professions that are in short supply. And quite a few new professions still do not exist, although some progress in education is visible, as we have the emergence of new specific professions, especially those undergraduate that have a very short but specific programs. This I can notice here in my country, Slovenia. I'm very proud of my country about education because almost everything is free of charge, and if you have a very good education, here the people is very uh, um, very how to say this very brave. There is a lot of educated person with diplomas, graduation, and so on. But still, this doesn't mean that you have a rich country, high GDP. Anyway, it's good to know why did you, as a child, even enroll into a chosen high school. Of course, the reasons for the enrollment in the secondary schools are quite many, but we can summarize them into 3 points. The profession was very attractive to me, regardless of my parents' decision, the first thing. The second point, the profession was performed by one of my parents. My parent has influenced my decision, a very often one, frequent one. And the last, the profession was very sought, the job was practically guaranteed. Well, one point can overlap with the other, but mostly you can see that the decision may be based on a certain point. Now I'm going to explain these points. Of these 3 points, only one is really concerning the child, and this is the first point. The second point is relating to the parents, while the third point to schools, employers, and to the country. In the following, you'll better understand what I have in mind. The first point is that the children is listening his signposts of the higher self, the inspiration, excitement. So the first point is still prevalent in the choice of a profession, which is good. But the second point isn't far behind, at least in the choice of secondary schooling, because parents have a great influence over children's decisions. In fact, today it's still prevalent the belief in the continuing of family professional tradition. So parents are often transferring their interests onto the children. But instead of this, should parents rather discover the hobbies of their children, what is actually exciting for them, and afterward they should in this also assisting them, supporting them. Although also in hobbies often comes to the transferring of interests to their children, this is very visible, as parents are all too much personifying with their offspring, like they are the second them, the second. For example, if a parent hasn't become successful in a certain sport, he may transfer this sport into his child so that he becomes successful in this. So that he becomes successful in this. Okay. The second point is thus parents' homework to cease forcing their children into parental interests, as children are individual beings. As for the third point, today's children still have no holistic overview on how to contribute to a country or the planet. Therefore, the third point is the homework for schools, employers, and countries, which must evaluate the workforce market and, on the basis of support, supply, and demand, reach a decision about which professions are necessary to be supported, what new professions have to be developed, and which professions should be limited by enrollment. Very simple. Thus, our schools, employers, and country should be always in close contact. We must there must be this flow of energy between these three. Further, so if parents, schools, employers, and the countries are going to successfully operating and cooperating together, then our children will always act accordingly to the first point and follow their inspirations. What remains is the inspiration excitement if you don't force their children, if you do not hypnotize them in a poor way. Thus, the free children who aren't under the pressure of their parents and the system can in such a way always develop their interests and find a profession that will be actually exciting for them. If there is, especially if there is a wide palette of options for education. The monetary economy through competition is also causing the fact that this is another point of interest of this employment. The monetary economy through competition is also causing the fact that employers want a very productive workforce with as low as possible payment. In short, than expensive workers with as much as possible experience. Yes, of course. To work for free. This is the best. And that's another reason why it's getting the newly educated youth so difficult their first job. Well, probably you have already ironically asked yourself, how can a student or a graduate get some experience when almost all employers require quite some experience? And consequently, it also happens that some work even for free, just to gain work experience. However, there is also the bright side here, being this that they often employ workers according to their actual knowledge and experiences and not only according to their formal education. This is a good thing. Of course, we have here in the background again the monetary system economy, since the such workers often good expertise for less money. They are practically offering high-grade knowledge for low-grade payment. Low-grade payment because, for example, they are not, they don't have the diploma, the faculty diploma, but they have, for example, done much studies of this of some faculty. But anyway, this is still good if such employees perform their work with all their excitement. If these workers are inspired by the work, this is the most important thing. Because this is the reflection of the higher self, and then if you listen to your higher self, signpost on higher self, then the money will sooner or later come. Not what you want, but what you need. Further, so the homework for employers and governments is also that they allow a more flexible employment irrespective of the formal education. I know that not everyone can become a surgeon. However, someone who has the desire and inspiration for self-education can become an excellent carpenter, auto mechanic, gardener, mason, salesman, artist, as well as an actor, writer, translator, tour guide, etc. However, looking from another perspective, is it even possible that unemployment can be also good for a certain perspective? Is it possible? For me, yes. Why? Well, if you use this wider vision, this bigger vision, then the unemployment period can be even welcomed. In fact, the unemployment period can be the best for someone that he finally takes the step into the positive direction, that he finally confronts with himself, that he reads something, that he learns something and implements the necessary changes. So that he is out of school educating, self-educating. Thus, self-education is another key for the reduction of unemployment and for the progress of our civilization. I'm one of such a very like self-educating, out of school educating, going to certain lectures, workshops, and so on. and not to put too much emphasis on these certificates, diplomas, and so on. In fact, I literally burnt my diploma. You can see the YouTube video about the YouTube clip about this. I'm interested only in the pure knowledge. I don't mind the certificates, the papers, and so on. Well, so consequently, after the unemployment period, can some become a more improved person than he was before, as well as a better employee, boss, or a director than he was before, a better worker, especially a better person, if he has dealt with personal growth and spiritual development. But the unemployed people are also doing well for our future, as they do not currently support the outdated professions that will be no longer needed in our futures. We have many outdated professions, especially the ones that are very tied to the monetary system. Let's say lotteries, casinos, stock exchange, and so on. And many others still that are like some establishments that are uh, creating poor products or services. In the performing of my service, in my former job, I met quite a few managers, bosses, and directors. And what have I discovered? I've discovered that almost none of the superiors was very versed in spiritual development. Well, I know that they have attended this and other courses of pedagogy and andragogy, but still, the situation wasn't such as it should be. In fact, in the period of my employment, I missed the face-to-face conversations with my superiors. Like in the elementary school, when something went wrong, then they were really the conversations, face-to-face conversations. I missed the discussions on general matters, like such as inspiration over the work, the relationship with my coworkers, what is the situations, then the occupational health issues, the desires for a better work equipment, the desire for moving into another department inside the establishments, and so on. None of this. And this is not good. But especially I noticed that the superiors were too little concerned over the occupational health issues. Also with what? Also with that if the workers were using the right ergonomic workspace, if they were using safety equipment, if they were taking breaks, and the like. For example, you're working on the computer for many hours and nobody asks you of the superiors if you have some pains. Take a break. Yes, there were conversations about the safety, but what kind of safety? For example, clothing, such clothing, because I was working in an electrical department, so that this static energy didn't uh, broke this this electric devices. So it went for the device, not for me, safety. For the device, not for me. Money. So the superiors should take care for their employees since the quality and productivity of the work is depending on the psychological and physical well-being of the workers. The superiors should be also attending the education of spiritual development that goes beyond the traditional psychology, this formal psychology. But not only the superiors, all the employees in a company. In fact, among the employees were also found such very conflicted persons who were solving challenges in an appropriate manner. I saw this day by day, which is very disturbing for the performance of everyday work, especially if you are located in a room that with many workers. The, it's more difficult to work. There's a lot of noise. In fact, among the employees were also found such very conflicted persons who were solving challenges in an appropriate manner, which is very disturbing for the performance of everyday work. Such conflicted persons are also often carrying personal troubles to work, and vice versa, the business troubles home. However, on the other side, realize that our primary activity is a personal thing, and that our personal things includes also primary activity. A primary activity is a job, an occupation. I use this term, primary activity, like I said. This means that in the future we fade the boundary between the primary activity and personal matters. But when you are going to be more and more well aligned. This way, just imagine the work that you are performing with those with whom you are getting the best along, with your coworkers who are also your friends. Just imagine the work where you are not holding back your personal matters, these good matters. Yes, imagine and visualize it as what you are imagining and visualizing. These are also creating a different, better future. This will be unity and co-alignment, rather than extreme duality and separation. This will bring much better results, much better products and services in the decades to come. So you can judge for yourself by yourself what are going to be the primary activities in the future. In the following, for example, I listed some of the establishments that are going to be in decline, and then the others that are going to expand. And then, I mean, the establishments that are going to be in decline, and then the others that are going to expand in the name of the natural economy. Of course, in one of the many probable futures, because our future is not destined. We have a lot of potentials. The future can be such or such. It depends on our alignment of the masses, of all of us, of the sum of all of us. So, the establishments in decline, the establishments and professions in decline. The first thing, everything that is tied to political and religious institutions as we know them today. The politics is going to change very soon, and is it changing? It's now being changed, and the religious institutions also. There are a lot of reforms to these religious institutions, because if there are no religion institutions, I mean, if there are no religious reforms, then the religions are not following the mass consciousness, because the religions must follow the mass consciousness, not vice versa. Otherwise, the religions are going to disappear. Eventually, they're going to transform. They're going to become more and more spiritual, very similar with others, very related to other religions. Second point, everything that is tied to weapons is in decline. Next, everything that is tied to fossil fuels, including gas and biomass, thus to thermal power plants, refineries, transportation of fossil fuels, petrol stations, etc. The exception will be hydrogen gas as fuel for fuel cells, which is obtained by the process of electrolysis of water. So, the fossil fuels in decline and professions that are tied to fossil fuels are in decline. Also gas, except, like I said, hydrogen. Biomass also in decline because biomass is also polluting with this, how do you say, carbon. In the air, you're breathing. Otherwise, the carbon goes down. But if you're breathing this day by day, it's not good for you. Further, everything that is tied to means of transportation, both personal and public, which is operating on fossil fuels, including gas, is in decline. So again, everything that is tied to fossil fuels, including gas. And like in the previous point, with the exception of hydrogen produced by the process of electrolysis of water. Because in burning hydrogen, you get water, vapor. So there is practically no pollution. There isn't any pollution. The key is where you obtain this hydrogen. The second one, the next, everything that is tied to nuclear and hydro power plants is in decline. Nuclear power is in decline. It's very polluting the planet. I mean, the storage of this uh, radiating uranium. This is the issue. What do you do with this byproduct? With the remaining, I mean, with the remaining uranium. And also hydropower plants are in decline because they're obstructing the flow of river and and so the fish. Then everything that is tied to genetic engineering of food. Yes. Also, everything that is tied to alcohol, beverages, and tobacco. Of course, the more you're well aligned, the more inspiration, excitement, the less alcohol and tobacco you need. Further, everything that is tied to livestock. More and more people are becoming vegetarian and vegan, and so there is less livestock. If I mention something about everything that is tied to genetic engineering of food? Of course, it's better to discover new species and plant them into other part of the world that are very well growing in the same climates, but in other parts of the world. To do experiments on this. Further, in decline, everything that is tied to classic medicine, pharmaceuticals, and treatment of mental and emotional patients. Of course, the more you're well aligned, the less sickness and illness, diseases, the less we need drugs and medicines and mental hospitals. Then, further, everything that is tied to law, police, and prisons. Of course, the more we're well aligned, the less is crime, the lesser is accidents, traffic accidents, because we have much presence and less regulations, less laws. Further, everything that is tied to the monetary system and its economy. Thus, to lotteries, casinos, stock exchanges, funds, insurance companies, currency exchanges, banks, tax offices, and the like. This is in decline. Everything is going into this natural economy, non-monetary economy, especially in certain countries. Further, everything that is tied to intellectual property, thus to patent offices, protection of designs, trademarks, copyright, and related rights. If you're well aligned, then you know that if someone steals you something, it steals for a purpose, that you learn something from this. And from vice versa case, if you're very well aligned, people are not going to steal from you. So in the future, you don't need these things: protection of designs, trademarks, patent offices, copyright, and so on. Good knowledge like spirituality, uh, personal growth, and even inventions, innovation should be shared with everyone. And if there is no money, why then copyright something? Free flow of products and services. Further, evidence it is tied to media and advertising as we know them today. If there is no money, you don't have to advertise everything all the day. The good things and services are selling them by themselves from mouth to mouth information. You don't need this all media advertising. And for the last, the establishment in expansion. What is going to expand? Everything that is tied to the energy of the future. So that's to solar energy, wind energy, geothermal energy, thermal energy, these solar towers, then tidal and wave energy, then electrolysis of water and fuel cells, free energy, and so on. All these alternative energies. Next, everything that is tied to the new era's technology and cybernetics, thus to automation, mechatronics, robotics, telerobotics, artificial intelligence, bionics, and so on. All this good science. Further, everything that is tied to nanotechnology and quantum physics. Here, the manipulation of matter will be increasingly taking place through the subatomic subtle world, through the world of consciousness. There is conscious. Like I said in the first two lectures, the further we go into dimensions and densities, we are already in this world of consciousness. It's the same as we go upward or downward, there is a closed loop. So, this will also cause the emergence of conscious interactive electronics. The conscious will be connected wirelessly with electronics. Further, everything is tied to astronomy and the exploration of space. Of course, this is a never-going exploration. I would add this to quantum physics or quantum mechanics. This is dealing with the smallest particles that is basically this unified field that is basically the field of consciousness. It's a science that is very tied to spirituality. Further, in expansion, everything that is tied to ecological recovery, thus to reforestation, recycling, recyclable and biodegradable materials, to bioremediation, dismantling of radioactive elements, and so on. Dismantling of radioactive elements, yes. Some methods, techniques, so that you can dismantle these byproducts, I mean, this unusable uranium and so on. Bioremediation. Bioremediation is so that you use certain natural organisms that are balancing these toxic substances, be it in rivers and so on. Rivers, ponds, lakes, and so on. Further, everything that is tied to natural organic food production, also in advanced greenhouses with hydroponics, aquaponics, aeroponics, and the like. So natural organic food production, biological, this is in expanding, especially in greenhouses, because if you have in a greenhouse, there you need a lot of this toxic substances so that the food is growing healthy. Further, everything that is tied to permaculture and self-sufficient dwellings. Self-sufficient dwellings. So the dwellings that are not connected to the, let's say, electrical field, they have their own water supply, power supply, and so on. And even their food. Further, everything that is tied to advanced modular building based on metals, polymers, composite materials, glass, etc. To a lesser extent also on the basis of wood, stone, bricks, clay, and other natural materials. Especially based on metals, polymers, composite materials, glass, etc. because you cannot build a skyscraper from wood, for example. No? For all this, there exist certain polymers, plastics that are very recyclable, and even when they are produced without the use of fossil fuels, because for the synthesis of certain materials you need fossil fuels for many polymers. Because I know this because I was working in the department with polymers. So not all plastics are bad, but the plastics that are very good, you have no money for buying them. The best plastics like that are used from NASA, National Space Administration, they are very good, but they are expensive. So of course, the less expensive is if you use glass, wood, and so on. Composite materials are basically materials that are composed of, let's say, of subcomponents, like most often from polymers and glass fiber, or polymers and carbon fiber. It can be from polymers and steel, or polymers or wood, or every possible way. Further, everything that is tied to beneficial geoengineering. So, beneficial geoengineering, the changing of the surface, replanting of species, replanting of plants, so on. Everything that is tied to public transportation, in particular to high-speed trains and aircrafts on alternative energy, because the best transportation is the train transportation, especially underground. No noise, straight line, it's fast, it's economic if you use alternative energy, and it's safe. Further, everything that is tied to the new era's advertising, thus to non-monetary multi-level marketing, personal advertising from mount-to-mount, media houses. And then also, if you have the previous point, if you have the train, underground train, there is no degradation of the surface. There is no, yes, it's more beautiful if there is no train rails on the surface. Okay. New eras advertising, thus to non-monetary multi-level marketing. Today we have the monetary multi-level marketing. I will go into this now. Then personal advertising is an expanding. This is mount-to-mount information that you tell someone. And media houses. What are media houses? It's a thing of the future. I'm going to explain the further lectures. Further, everything that is tied to holistic or integrative medicine that combines classical and alternative medicine under the one roof, especially the emphasis on energy treatments like Reiki, reconnective healing, Tesla metamorphosis, theta healing, crystal therapy, stereophonic therapy, etc. Many these new energy healings that are arising today. A holistic medicine means that you have under one roof this classical medicine and this alternative. What regards now in our country, there aren't any such institutions, any such hospitals. This alternative medicine is very disconnected from this classical, and this is not good. Further, everything is tied to the new era's education of personal growth and spiritual development, thus to dimensions and densities, like I said, these universal facts, words of higher selves or souls, of these human bodies, what is inspiration, excitement, from where it's coming. These are new teachings. Then about channeling, about out-of-body experiences or dreaming, HSP, ESP, extrasensory perception. These teachings are going to be included more in this elementary primary schooling. Then about what is called alignment, or this timing of events, synchronicity. These are new teachings. This is on the rise and expanding. Then what is telekinesis or psychokinesis? What is meditation? This must be integrated more and more in primary education, so that the child discovers what is his part in this world, how things works really. In the last slide, the last chapter, the origin of the 8-hour workday and the related working life with pensions. Very interesting. From where it is all originating? So, well, the 8-hour workday movement or 40-hour week movement was a movement that was preventing abuses and excesses of work in our history. It had its origin in the Industrial Revolution in Britain. At that time, the working day could range from 10 to 16 hours, and the work week was typically 6 days long. In addition, the child labor was also common, and this was not good. And eventually, Robert Owen had raised the demand for a 10-hour workday in 1810, and by 1817, he had formulated the slogan 8 hours labor, 8 hours recreation, 8 hours rest. But only in 1866, in Geneva, the International Working Men's Association took up the demand for the 8-hour workday to its Congress, so that Congress finally adopts 8-hour workday as the legal limit. So first it was this 10 to 16 days, 10 to 16 hours a day work, and he strive for this 10 and then to 8 hours workday. What regards the related working life with pension? It was proposed by the Prussian politician Otto von Bismarck in 1889. Actually, his suggestion was to work up to the age of 70. Anyway, his promise to older people that they are going to be provided with pension after the completed working life, it wasn't a too big financial threat for that time government, as the average life expectancy of the Prussians was only about 45 years of age. Can you even imagine? So, for me, that I'm going to live only 5 years more. Yes, there were difficult conditions, life conditions, and such was the life expectancy. However, today, when many people are living up to the age of 80, 90, and more, can such a promise easily push a country into a collapse if the pensions are, for example, too high and the state duties too small? So there has to be this balance that system doesn't collapse. Well, this is everything for today. The next time uh, I'm going to talk about natural economy. What can we do? What basically is this natural economy? Yes, very important lecture. Okay, have a nice day. Bye bye.